the book The Death of Liberalism. He's a New York Times best-selling author, founder and editor of The American Spectator. He's been our guest many times before here on the program. Bob, good morning to you.
It's good to be with you. I enjoyed your contemporary conversation just a few seconds ago. That was a very interesting...
Wow, you mean people were listening to that?
Well, you had one guy out here in Alexandria, and it was very interesting. I'd like to, I might add one other thing here. I've been reading a lot about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and World War II, and it's astonishing to me how religious Franklin Delano Roosevelt was. He took prayer very seriously. He took his leadership as President of the United States as it's just the natural thing to introduce God into his declarations. At the unveiling of the Atlantic Charter in August of 1940 with Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill wasn't a particularly religious man. The author of this book I'm reading says he was an atheist. I don't quite think he was an atheist, but he was certainly an agnostic. And at any rate, he will paddle on up the steps of a rostrum with Franklin Roosevelt, and at Franklin Roosevelt's bidding, they had a religious ceremony on the deck of the Yorktown to commemorate this important event, this Atlantic Charter. And then again, in December of 1940, Winston Churchill appeared at the White House, and the two of them appeared before a joint session of Congress in which they had another religious religious ceremony, and they certainly celebrated Christmas in the White House with Christmas carols and things like that. So you talk about the difference between today's president and yesterday's Democratic president in 1940, you're talking about a huge difference, and it's a difference that's a matter of faith and lack of faith. And I think President Obama, by your lights and by mine, lacks faith.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in fact, if you go back and read some of his prayers, he penned those himself.
Yes, I know that.
They're very poignant, and they're very powerful, and they're not just ceremonial. Oh, God, big man in the sky,
to whom it may concern.
Yeah, it was. These were personal. Of course, the guy was involved in World War II.
Right.
That'll drive you to your knees.
Yeah,
You're the
like
leader.
Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War.
Exactly, same thing. And so, if you read Franklin Delano Roosevelt's prayers, they were very sincere, very personal, and also very poignant.
And I would point out that in 1940, I don't think I'd have been a supporter of Franklin Roosevelt, but I think he'd ask me to join him in prayer, and I certainly would join him in prayer.
Yeah, his politics aside,
that's right.
I think, but anyway, well, interesting, because the title of your book, I told somebody, I said, I read it, it's called The Death of Liberalism. I said, I bet Bob started writing this after the 2010 midterm elections, because now we have the president reelected, who's the most liberal in history in his ideology about government, and yet you're writing about the death of liberalism. So which is it, Bob?
Well, I think it is the death of liberalism. I wrote it in light of the 2010 elections, but I also recognize that it was possible, and I say in the book, it's entirely possible that the president will get reelected. However, the president is not a liberal. The president is a socialist, and everything I said in that in the death of liberalism is true today. You have sitting in the White House the most left-wing, not liberal, the most left-wing president in American history. And by the way, by 2014, he will be a lame duck. The way our politics has gone for the last 30 years is conservatism has been gaining speed. It's been gaining a larger and larger constituency. It picked up the neocons. It picked up the evangelicals. It picked up the Reagan Democrats. Most recently, it's picked up the Tea partiers. And in this election, as I said in the book when it came out in April, in this election, I said they will pick up for years to come the independent vote, and they did pick up the independent vote. The way politics has developed over the last 30 years is conservatism has grown and plateaued. It plateaued in 2012. Romney got more votes than McCain, but he didn't get enough votes. It plateaued. A number of people didn't show up at the polls, and that's the reason. That was the reason he lost, and the other reason is, of course, that the Obama forces had a better ground game. But by 2014, when we're in even more financial difficulty than we are today, and we're in financial difficulty because of the president's policies, it will grow again. 2014 is going to be similar to the 2010 election, and 2010 election was a blowout for the conservatives. So I'm full of hope. I invite you to join me in being full of hope.
I think if it would have been a white president running against Mitt Romney, he loses. I think the racial dynamic played a large part in President Obama winning this time. Because I think that played a big part. Because look at the history of our country. We always kick out presidents who fail. Jimmy Carter failed. We kicked him out. George Bush the first failed. We kicked him out. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat. American voters, if you don't do the job, they give you 4 years and they send you into your very luxurious retirement.
Like Clint Eastwood said, like if you don't get the job done.
But in this case,
well, Bob, let me ask you this. Now, this book, by the way, is fascinating on a number of levels. You provide a lot of history in this book, and because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems clear to me. You tell me if I've missed the point. That you're saying when you say the death of liberalism, you're talking about classical liberalism. And you talk about the two civil wars that liberalism has gone through, 1946 to 48, and then 1968 to 72. I'm guessing that your argument is that classical liberalism has died, and what is now called liberalism is socialism. So my question is, first of all, is that a correct understanding of your book? But then my worry is that our country is filling up maybe not with liberals, but with socialists.
Well, I think that's legitimate. But I think that, and the last liberal to run for president was defeated in 2008 by President Obama, and he defeated Hillary Rodham Clinton. And she was the last of a spate of liberals who came out of the 1972 convention and spread throughout the Democratic Party and kind of made it a ridiculous creature. I call them the infantile left, and they were what followed Hubert Humphrey and people like that, who were serious liberals. And I didn't agree with them, but at any rate, they were serious people, and they were serious stewards of the American government. The Clintons and John Kerry and people like that, they were kind of infantile, and they were defeated in 2008 by Obama. And in 2012, Obama secured his leadership of the party. But it's a leadership that can't hold, because the forces that are against it are the serious people in the country now. And I think that once we it sinks in that we lost basically for tactical reasons. We lost because of bad organization, and ironically, Romney didn't put together a ground game. He wasn't the good. We thought he was a good businessman, but apparently he was a good corporate businessman or a good takeover businessman. But he wasn't a good down-to-earth businessman. And we need people that can put together in battleground states a turn out the vote campaign. And I think we will in 2014, and I know we will in 2016. And this isn't going to last.
Talking to our Emmett Tyrrell Jr., our Bob, and his book is called The Death of Liberalism. His last name is spelled Tyrrell. It's very interesting, yeah, because 2 years ago, we were talking about the historic change in the House of Representatives that took place. I mean, there were more people. There was more House seats in 2010 switched from Republican to Democrat than had ever happened in the history of
Democrat to Republican.
I'm sorry, excuse me, yes. And basically conservative Republicans.
Right.
I mean, there was a strong reaction among those who voted that year against President Obama's agenda, particularly against Obamacare. And so that's why conventional wisdom was, hey, this guy's very unpopular. Unemployment rates are way up. We're going into debt that's going to drown us. The guy's job performance percentage is not good. It's below 45 or whatever it was. So there's no way he can win again. It's probably going to be anybody but Obama in 2012. And yet here he is. Here he has been reelected as president of the United States,
and now believes he has a mandate to
now believe
do
he has a
wants.
mandate. I have one thing here that I think we're going to have to look at in the future, Bob and Ed, as you go forward, is that conservatives may win and maintain the control of the House of Representatives, and may even at some point in the near future win back the Senate, and that the conservative ideology of government may be again represented as the majority view in the House and the Senate.
You mean state by state kind of thing? We can do
state
that.
by state. If you look at the governors that have been elected recently, basically they're Republican conservatives. However, when it comes to a national election, i.e. the presidential election, the Electoral College is, and I'm not opposed to it, and I understand the wisdom of it. It was created by our founding fathers. But it is now heavily in favor of the Democrat.
Well, now wait a second. You brought up an awful lot of issues here. First of all, let me make clear that in 2010 we also won a large number of state legislatures across America.
Yes, that's true.
We also won governorships. We now hold 30 governorships across America. And in 2012, when President Obama supposedly won this glorious victory, he won it with 4 to 8 million. It's not. The number hasn't been finalized yet, but certainly I'm right to say 4 to 8 million fewer votes than he got 4 years before. That means that as many as 8 million people deserted him, as well they should have. So if he calls that a mandate, it's a pretty flabby mandate. It's a pretty skin or scant mandate, and I'd frankly put anybody up against any responsible conservative up against him in 2014 or 2016. I mean, he's going to be in very big trouble. He's in big trouble now. He got, upon re-election, the smallest bump in the history of poll taking. He won. The Gallup poll said he won 2%. He had approval rating of 52%. The next day they said it was 51%. I mean, we're back to where we were before the election, and we should respond with the kind of strength and principled rejection of him that we had before the election.